The Raptor on Enceladus. By J.W. Steele. Every morning, the raptor's shrill cry pierced the stillness of Saturn's icy moon, Enceladus. It reverberated through the labyrinthine ice canyons surrounding the mining colony of Eos Prime, on the frozen glaciers of the desolate waste. Its haunting echo traveled far, carried by the frigid winds over the moon's frozen plains, chilling the hearts of those who heard it. The raptor was a shadow of death, a specter that loomed over the fragile human mining outpost like a dark omen. No one knew where the flying beast had come from. Some speculated it was an unintended consequence of human meddling, perhaps an escaped genetic experiment from the terraforming labs. Others whispered that it had always been here, lurking in the ionosphere of Enceladus, a predator created in the stellar green cosmic abyss. Either way, its arrival marked the beginning of a nightmare. The raptor was no ordinary creature. Its sleek, frost-covered body moved with lethal precision, talons glinting like shards of obsidian under the pale light of Saturn. Its eyes burned with an unsettling intelligence, and its movements suggested cunning far beyond mere instinct. Worst of all, it was a creature without mercy, devouring not only its prey but its own kind. Some colonists believed the raptor wasn't just hunting, it was surviving a desperate, brutal cycle of existence. A dozen miners had already vanished, leaving behind only faint trails of blood in the snow and shattered equipment. Their disappearance hung heavily over Eos Prime, yet no one dared to speak openly of what they all knew to be true. Fear slithered through the colony, seeding mistrust and paranoia. Tools were left abandoned, and airlocks reinforced as soon as the sun dipped behind the jagged horizon. Sheriff Quinn Mallory clung to his authority, though his reassurances rang hollow. "It's just an bloody bird," he repeated at every meeting, in the Union Hall, his words steady but his eyes betrayed doubt. "We'll take care of it," he would say, his voice resolute, but the shadow of uncertainty hung heavy in the room. Wyatt Thorn, the extraction chief, stood up and glared at the impotent sheriff, his voice sharp and scornful when he spoke. "When are you going to grow a spine, Mallory? We've been hearing the same excuse for 3 damn years. We're short on bodies in the mines, and it's your job to protect us." Wyatt spit on the floor. "You might be shy about what really happened to those miners, but we all know the truth." Sheriff Quinn's forehead knitted and his hand rested on the grab of his pistol. The creature they faced was no mere animal. The raptor defied every attempt at categorization, its intelligence far beyond that of some drifting reptilian sky vulture. Whispers circulated that it could mimic human voices, calling out from the frozen shadows in the haunting tones of lost loved ones, luring its prey into the unforgiving wasteland. Some swore they'd seen it perched on the icy ridges, its eyes gleaming with a cold, calculating malice. To the colonists, it wasn't just a predator, it was an indomitable force because nothing else could endure the inconceivable cold. And it was growing bolder. It had found its way into the mines, its cries echoing through the narrow ice tunnels and vibrating in the domes of Eos Prime. Its shadow often lingered at the colony's outskirts, a grim reminder of the predator's proximity. The colonists of Enceladus were trapped, their terror mounting with every passing hour. Something had to be done, but the question remained, how does one kill a creature that breathes nitrogen and the synthetic oxygen atmosphere created by the terraforming machines? Wyatt didn't believe the raptor breathed at all. He claimed it existed on oxygen it processed from water ice that it ionized in its belly. The creature had no natural enemies, no vulnerabilities that anyone could discern. Conventional weapons had proven ineffective, bullets shattered on its armored hide, and energy blasts only seemed to enrage it further. Its cunning was its most terrifying trait, outmaneuvering every trap set by the miners and then vanishing into the frozen glacial expanse like a flying shadow. Wyatt knew their survival depended on outsmarting it. He'd gathered his crew in the dimly lit operations bay. "If we can't kill it," he said grimly, "we'll have to contain it. Drive it into one of the old, abandoned shafts and seal it in for good." "But what if it gets out?" a young technician asked, fear evident in her voice. Wyatt's jaw tightened. Then we're as good as dead. But I'd rather die fighting than wait for that thing to pick us off one by one. The plan was set. They would use themselves as bait, luring the creature into the depths of the mines where the atmosphere was coldest and most extreme. It was a desperate gamble, but on Enceladus, desperation was all they had left. Wyatt Thorn stood at the mouth of the mine. He scanned the endless white horizon. Beyond the colony, the vast, cracked surface of Enceladus stretched out in jagged ridges and icy plains, concealing horrors beneath its crust. His crew was ready, their faces pale but resolved, each armed with modified plasma cutters and makeshift explosives. If they were going to trap the Raptor, they needed every tool at their disposal. "Remember the plan," Wyatt said, his voice cutting through the cold like a blade. "We lure it down Tunnel 6 and collapse the shaft. No mistakes, no second chances." The crew nodded, their fear palpable. They knew what was at stake. The Raptor had already claimed too many lives, and its incursions into the mines threatened not only their livelihoods but their very survival. Wyatt glanced over his shoulder at Quinn Mallory, who stood a few paces back, his hand never far from his phaser. "You'd better not freeze up, Mallory," Wyatt growled. "If this goes sideways, we're all dead." Quinn's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. His eyes flicked toward the shadowed entrance of the mine, where the faintest sound of scraping metal echoed. The Raptor was near. "Let's move," Wyatt commanded, motioning for the team to take their positions. They descended into the icy tunnels, their boots crunching against the frost-covered floor. The further they went, the darker and colder it became. The only light came from their headlamps, casting eerie shadows on the jagged ice walls. Then they heard it, a low, guttural growl that sent shivers down their spines. The Raptor's cry followed, a piercing shriek that reverberated through the tunnels, making the walls seem alive with its echo. The sound was otherworldly, like the scream of 1,000 tortured souls. Wyatt gripped his plasma cutter tighter, and whispered, "Steady." Like a flash, a blur of movement appeared in the distance, the creature illuminated briefly by their headlamps before it vanished into the shadows. Wyatt felt a surge of adrenaline. "It's here. Fall back to the trap point." The team retreated, their footsteps quick but measured, leading the Raptor deeper into the labyrinthine tunnels. The creature's pursuit was relentless, its talons scraping against the ice, its guttural growls growing louder. Wyatt's heart pounded as they reached Tunnel 6, the designated trap. "Set the charges," he barked. Two crew members hurried to plant the explosives along the tunnel walls while the others formed a defensive line. The Raptor emerged from the shadows, its glowing eyes fixed on them. It was larger than any of them had imagined, its armored hide glinting like polished titanium, its razor-sharp talons gleaming with ice. The team retreated, their footsteps quick but measured, leading the Raptor deeper into the labyrinthine tunnels. The creature's pursuit was relentless, its talons scraping against the ice, its guttural growls growing louder. Wyatt's heart pounded as they reached Tunnel 6, the designated trap. Wyatt raised his plasma cutter and fired, the blue-hot beam striking the creature's flank. It roared in fury but didn't falter, its movements fluid and terrifying. The others opened fire, their beams lighting up the tunnel in a dazzling display of energy and ice shards. The Raptor dodged and weaved, its intelligence evident in every calculated move. "Fall back!" Wyatt shouted as the charges were armed. The crew retreated further down the shaft, drawing the Raptor closer to the explosives. It lunged forward, swiping at a miner. He screamed and his arm dropped to the floor. Wyatt fired again, aiming for its head, but the creature's armored skull deflected the shot. "Now!" Wyatt yelled. Carlos, the mess sergeant, hit the detonator. The charges exploded with a deafening roar, the tunnel collapsing in a cascade of ice and rock. The Raptor let out a final, ear-splitting scream, and vanished beneath tons of frozen debris. The dust and frost settled, leaving an eerie silence. Wyatt and his team stood at the edge of the collapse, their breaths hissed in ragged gasps. "Is it dead?" Quinn asked, his voice shaky. "It's buried," Wyatt replied grimly. "Whether that's enough to kill it, I don't know. But it won't be getting out of there anytime soon." The crew began their ascent back to the surface, the weight of what they had just done pressing heavily on them. Wyatt's mind raced with doubts. Had they truly stopped the creature, or had they merely delayed the inevitable? He couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over. That night, as the colony settled into an uneasy calm, a low rumble echoed through the icy plains. Deep beneath the crust of Enceladus, something stirred. The Raptor's eyes opened in the darkness, burning with unrelenting fury. It wasn't defeated, it was waiting. Wyatt stood at his post, staring out at the frozen wasteland. He'd bought them time, but he knew the truth. The Raptor was a force of nature, a predator born of Saturn's mysterious green astral realms. It couldn't be killed, only contained. As he turned away, he muttered under his breath, "It ain't over until it's over." Nothing like a raptor to keep life interesting.